How many of you guys saltwater fish in Georgia? Any hands? Any hands? All right. As of January 1st this year, you have to have a permit in Georgia now to saltwater fish. It's called the SIP program, Saltwater Informational Program. You have to have that program to legally fish in Georgia in saltwater. Whatever retailer, online, wherever you get your fishing license, you can get this program to get the certificate to go with your fishing license to be able to fish legally in Georgia for saltwater. October, we like to go down and catch the bull redfish. I don't know if y'all know anything about the spotted channel bass, we call it, or the bull redfish. But we go down in October, about the second or third week, we'll go down and fish the pier. Tybee Pier, Jekyll Beach, Jekyll Pier. The fish migrate from north, pretty much south, making their migration, making their run to lay their eggs and do what they do. Falling back into the SIP program with the bull redfish, in Georgia they got a tagging program. If you catch a redfish over 20 inches, you don't have to tag it, but the DNR, they track the migrations of the bull redfish as they grow. And they stick a tag in it, real similar to this. This is one of my old tags, a pin busted in my bag and I didn't send it off. But if anybody ever catches a redfish in Georgia that's got a tag real similar to this in it, you can take this cap off, and inside of it, if you'll notice, there's a number on that tag. Take that tag out, fill out your info, and you mail it back into the DNR. Whoever catches that fish with that tag in it, they'll send you a shirt and a hat, as well as me for tagging the fish and sending in the info. And that's how the DNR tracks the migration of the bull redfish. A lot of people don't know, but the big bulls is for the future. That's your future fish in the Atlantic or the Gulf or wherever. My kids might want to go down and catch some bull redfish in the future. That's the reason there's such strict restrictions on the bull redfish. You know, they got that slot limit of 14 to 23 inches. Anything under, anything over has to be thrown back in the water. And that's how they regulate the creel limits and all that kind of stuff for the redfish here in Georgia. But these tags is a real nice way of them being able to track the redfish here in Georgia and do what they do. You know, I've got the lady's name for anybody that might be interested in the tagging program. Just to let you know, in Georgia, in the whole state of Georgia right now, there's only 53 anglers doing a tagging program in Georgia for the redfish. And not only are they tagging redfish, they're tagging triple tail, they're tagging tarpon in the summer, and they're also starting to tag black drum. So if anybody's interested, let me know when I get done with my presentation. I'll be more than happy to give you her phone number and her info to get your tag to be able to tag fish. Fishing for the fish, it's pretty simple. The biggest thing is going to be bait. What we do, a lot of times, we'll take a double drop rig. It's just this is just a simple double drop rig. Tied to your main line, it's got 2 hooks that'll go on it. You put your sinker on the bottom. Put you a couple small hooks on it with some shrimp. You can catch all the bait fish you want. Normally, a lot of people do a lot of your back canals and your back creeks, depending on your tides, how they flow. But a cast net is going to be your #1 friend for catching bait on the coast. Mullet, shrimp, yellowtails, any kind of small bait is going to be your best bait for redfish. Legally in Georgia, if it's considered a game fish in Georgia, you're technically not supposed to use it for cut bait. You might want to keep that in mind. When a man walks out on the pier and you got a cooler full of whiting that's this big and you got the head cut off of them, be prepared to get a ticket. Be prepared. Because they will write you a ticket and they do not ask permission to open coolers. They sure don't. So a mullet is going to be your #1 bait. It's just a bait fish. It's nothing special. It's just a mullet. Cast net's going to be your #1 bet for a mullet. Rigs we use for the bulls, to catch the bull reds. On a pier, this is 11-foot rod. Normally, we like to use a 10-foot. Most of your piers got a canopy or a gazebo of some sort on the end of the pier with the T's on the ends of them. It makes it real hard to cast with a long rod. Surf fishing is totally different. If you're going to surf fish, I got some 11, 12-foot surf rods that I can zing into the next zip code. But on a pier, you're kind of limited. You got so many people on the pier. It's real tight fishing, and you got lines all over the place. And you start throwing over people's lines and you start tangling up people's stuff, they do get a little ill. They start breaking out lines and scissors, and they do get a little ticked off. So we like to use, like I said, a 10 to 11-foot rod, a medium heavy to a heavy. You can use a spinning rod, you can use a casting rod. This is a casting rod with a conventional reel that we call on it. It just varies. A lot of people don't like a casting rod because they're bad to backlash and blow up. Personally, myself, once I've switched to a conventional, I won't go back. You get more distance, it's just a lot better setup for what we do versus the spinning setup. It's just totally perfect. Sinkers, it varies. You can use a pyramid sinker. You'll look at this sinker and you'll be like, what is that? That's what's called a frog tongue. We got a buddy of ours that's got a mold, and he makes these sinkers for us. They seem to bite better in the sand and hold better in the current on the incoming and outgoing tides. We seem to like them better. They don't roll as bad on the sand. They seem to cut better. Sinker slides, you don't have to have a sinker slide. You can run your sinker straight through your line if you prefer. It just works a little better because it don't fray your line as bad, it seems. Leaders, for the redfish, we usually use a mono leader. That right there is a 100-pound leader, just a regular mono, nothing special leader. Hooks for the redfish is something that we're really, really picky about. A lot of people, we don't use J-hooks. That's the #1 no-no for bull redfish because, like I said, your bulls is going to be your future fish. If a bull redfish swallows a regular J-hook and you can't get it out, eventually it's going to die. If it gets down in its gut and you can't get that hook out, it'll die. Circle hooks, it's going to be your #1 friend for bull redfish. You don't have to set the hook, the fish hooks itself. When it takes off running, off the end of the pier, pulling a line, all you got to do is tighten your drag on the reel. The fish is going to hook itself. It's that simple. And all you got to do is fight it and bring it in. But the circle hooks is the way to go. We really, really, really like the circle hooks for the bulls. It makes a lot safer for the fish, and it's almost an instant hookup because they hook themselves, you know. But that's my bull red setup for the bull redfish. Like I say, bait. Normally we like to use mullet. If it's a big mullet, probably a 12-inch mullet, cut it in half and use half of that bait. Use your other half for the next time you get another fish on. That's how we like to use it. What we do for the reds and for the sheephead is hard to, in the kayaks, at high tide, you can't get under the docks. We fish Tybee Pier a lot. And on the back river at Tybee and Alley 3 at high tide, you've probably got 4 feet of room between the water and the bottom of the docks when you're trying to slip under them. So what we'll do is fish the incoming tide to a high tide and fish half the outgoing tide. And that's when we try to roll off the pier and get in our kayaks and go to the back river and try to catch our sheephead. You make a whole productive day that way because you're fishing all day long. And we fish hard. When you drive 6 hours to the coast to fish, you want to fish. So what we do, like I said, we fish high tide, fish the incoming high tide, fish the outgoing till about halfway out, maybe just a little bit past halfway. Once you do that, you put your kayak in the back river, and beforehand, before we get started, we'll go in the marsh and get us some fiddler crabs. Fiddler crabs is going to be your #1 best friend for sheephead. #1, remember that. The only drawback to a fiddler crab is is the black sea bass. The black sea bass will annihilate a fiddler crab. You get one chance when the sheephead bites, when you drop it down next to a piling, say this is a piling and you're sitting in your kayak, when you drop down, you're going to get one little bump. You're going to get, and that's all you get. You're going to reel it back up, put another fiddler on, and drop it back down. And as soon as you feel, you almost have to set the hook before you catch the fish. As soon as you get that bump, you want to pull straight up. You don't want to jerk, you don't want to yank, you want to ease straight up on that fish. And it's more of a hook set than it is a jerk set. It's a whole different, it's more of an instinct bite and an instinct hook set than it is actually setting the hook on the fish. I know it sounds weird and you're going to be like, man, you're crazy, but that's how you catch a sheephead. It's totally, it's like I say, it's an instinct bite. It's opposite of what you would think. We fished October last year, and we got into black sea bass so bad that we couldn't even keep a fiddler crab in the water. So what we done, we found a big seawall, and there's riprap or rocks stacked all up on this seawall. You start rolling them rocks back, and you'll find little razorback mussels. They vary in size, roughly from 1.5 inches to 4 inches. We just got tons of those things and put them in our lap. Take you a rock and crunch them. Save you a few to use the fish with, but take and crunch them mussels up. When you get on a piling, you can take the hands of them that you crunched up and you can start chumming in sheephead. They will go absolutely insane. They will go bonkers over a crushed up mussel. When you get them good chummed up and get them feeding, take you one of them mussels, and right where it splits open in the back side of the split, run your hook through it and drop it down on them sheephead. And you get more of a chance because they got to crunch that shell to eat that mussel instead of the fiddler crabs because they're so soft. And you get a better chance of catching a fish that way. It works a lot better, and the black sea bass don't seem to bother the mussels as bad as they do the fiddler crabs. So it's kind of a give and take. The rig we use for the sheephead is just a regular old fishing rig. As you can tell, I took a 6-foot, medium heavy, regular old rod. Now you're gonna say that don't look like a 6-foot rod, but I cut about 6 inches off the tip of this. Now you got to remember, you're sitting under the docks and you're pulling straight up, and you're going to be up in the docks. You're going to want a little bit off the tip of that rod, but you still want enough backbone on it to catch a 7 or 8, 9 pound sheephead. Hooks and rigs we use, it's real simple. I like to use an upside down, reversed bullet weight, one way, one the other, and put a bead in the middle between them. That keeps the sinkers from egging in the middle when they bump each other all day long when you're dropping it up and down. But I like to drop it down to a double barrel swivel. Y'all can see it right there. Real simple setup. And off of that, I run a 20-pound regular leader, monoliter, no fluoro. They don't matter to sheephead, they don't care. A number 10 owner SSW hook. And I know owner hooks are real pricey and they're real expensive, but the old saying goes, you get what you pay for. That's what I use. Just because of the simple fact that the hook is so sharp, it's like a needle on the end of it. The sheephead, their mouths are slap full of teeth. They got incisors and they got crushers on their tongue and on the roof of their mouth. Sheephead, all they eat is fiddler crabs, barnacles, oysters. They just pick off the pilings all day long. That's what they eat, that's what they feed on. So it takes a real sharp hook to get that hook set up inside of their mouth. That's the advantage of the sharp hook, having to have a sharp hook to get it set up in there. I've actually caught sheephead right here on the lip of the mouth before and get them up to the boat and then they get away. But like I said, you want a good reel, it's got lots of drag. This little reel I got right here is just a old Penn 920. There's tons and tons of drag. You can tell, I can't even, Any of you guys ever caught a brim, bluegill? Any of you guys ever caught a good size, say a half-pound bluegill? You know how hard they fight. They fight really hard, don't they? When you catch a sheephead, you can multiply that by about 6 times how hard a brim is. They got the same body design, the same fins, the same design as a brim, but they're 3, 4, 5 times bigger than a brim. So it's like catching a brim on steroids. It is one fight that's really, really awesome. That makes it the fun part of it, and it makes it a challenge because they're so hard to catch. You know, you'll drop fiddler crabs on these things all day long, and they'll be biting and biting, and you can't get that hook set. And you're like, man, I know he's down there, I know he's biting, but you just have to keep on, and finally you'll get that niche to where you'll finally just pull one up, and you'll be like, man, this is unreal, you know. But going back to the reel, the main line on this reel is your #1 friend. I got 60-pound braid main line on here. You got to remember where you're fishing around these pilings. They all got oysters and barnacles and all this razor sharp stuff sticking off these pilings. And the first thing these fish do is take and wrap you. They want to wrap you around these pilings. Always run a heavy main line for sheephead fishing. The reason I run a 20-pound leader, if you hang your hook on a piling, the leader will break and you'll get your sinkers and your swivel back. That's the beauty of it. I got these leaders already made up. I got them in my tackle box. You break one off and tie one on, and you're back fishing in like 2 seconds. And you're back on the fish. So it's a real simple fishing, but I will tell you this: if you cherish your kayak and if you really, really like your kayak a lot, rubbing on a pilings for sheephead fishing, it is really rough on a boat. It'll do a number. I got an old Emotion Mojo, and the guys in here that've seen it, they'll tell you that it looks rough. It's a rough looking boat. But as far as the sport of catching them, there's nothing like it. It's really fun. It's a lot of fun to catch them. And any questions? Y'all got any questions to throw at me?
Dean, I'm wondering, on your longer rod,
Yeah.
you appear to have about a 2.5 foot leader on there?
I do.
Is that what you use either surf or pier fishing? Is
Either way,
above 2.5 foot?
either or. Whether you're surf fishing or pier fishing, you're pretty much doing the same principle. The only difference is if you're sitting on a pier, of course, you're going to be up higher off the water. If you're sitting on a beach and you're surf fishing, you're lower to the water. Of course, we use sand spikes, which is just a regular piece of PVC pipe with a point cut on it. We job it in the sand and stick our rod in that sand spike. Same identical setup, same principle, nothing different. It's just the same, you know, either way. But like I said, we use for surf fishing. You can use this rod for surf fishing all day long. I can use this rod for surf fishing. You can still catch fish. The first bull redfish I ever caught, and y'all are not going to believe me, was in the surf. It was dead in the surf. It was in the suds of the surf on a piece of mullet tail that big. 47-inch bull redfish. And what's so amazing is these guys, they go out and they buy these 11, 12-foot surf rods and they'll cast into the next zip code 200, 300 yards. I can take this rod right here, I can throw it right in the breakers in the surf, and I can catch bull redfish, I can catch whiting, I can catch trout, I can catch any fish that they can catch 300 yards off the beach right here in the surf, right in the breakers in the suds. So a lot of people don't realize that, but there's fish there. They're right there under your feet. So to answer your question, David, yes, it is the same setup. We do use, if we're just strictly fishing for the bull redfish and not for sharks, then we use a mono leader. If we know the sharks are there and they keep breaking us off on the mono leaders, then we'll switch to a steel leader, which is actually a piece of steel wire tied to the swivel and tied to the hook. You don't get broke off, but you do catch a lot more sharks that way. Some piers, Tybee Pier is known, no shark fishing at all whatsoever on Tybee Pier. They can't tell you what you're gonna catch. You can pull up anything in saltwater. But if you roll out on top of your pier and you start throwing out chunks of fish and the hooks that's this big, and you got a reel that's this big around, they know you're shark fishing. But for the mono leaders, for the bulls, it's so much easier to cast. It don't get tangled up. It just works better. Your bait kind of floats up a little bit versus the weight of the wire holding it down in the sand. Give or take, it's however you know. The leaders are endless. There's tons of different ways of rigging terminal tackle. It's endless. Different opinions and different ways.
And is that, how heavy is that sinker that you've got on there? Is
This
it
sinker I got
about
on
3
here,
ounce or?
I want to say, I think this is a 6 ounce that I got on here. That's actually a 5 ounce, a 5 ounce sinker. That's the beauty of the long rod for the surf. You're going to, most of your surf casting, surf fishing, you're going to go from a 3 to 8 ounce sinker. And on top of that, you're going to put bait, which is probably another 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces. So you're chunking a lot of weight. You're going to put a lot of weight out there to get the distance that a lot of the guys cast, you know. And I'm guilty of it too, and I just told you can catch fish right in the surf. And I'm just as bad as the rest of them. Yeah, the big fish are way out there. That ain't always so. You know, you can catch fish right here in the suds, right where the waves are breaking. So it's that's the beauty of fishing. You fish wherever you want. You know.
When fishing in the surf out of a kayak, if you want to keep it, put a leash on it.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
I'm not so much about, but like I've rolled one in the rapids and snapped the rod.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
imagine the surf's gonna be the same.
Yep, yep. But it's, you know, they make leashes, they make rod floats you can put on. It's, of course, the surf's rough, and you're trying to bust through the breakers to get out into the smooth water. Personally, myself, if I was gonna do that, I wouldn't chunk a lot of money into buying a high-end, real high-dollar surf setup if that's all you're gonna do is launch through the surf. Because you do stand that chance of losing it, like you're saying. I would do a 7-foot rod or 8-foot rod, spinning or conventional, whichever you prefer. It just varies. It depends on person to person on what setup that you want to do, you know, and how you, what kind of fishing you're doing. That's the main thing once you get out there. You know, a lot of the guys troll, and when they troll, they use a pretty heavy rod. So when they get that bite, it'll pull drag off instead of leaning the rod over, and you get a better hook set that way. So, like I say, it's totally up to that person and that person's budget on what kind of rod and reel setup that they wanted to use, you know.
What species would you be looking for?
I don't know, I've never done it, so, and this is gonna be on a different coast, but, you know, I was thinking more along going out through the surf, you know, having never done it, I figure I'm gonna roll a few times.
If you're looking for redfish, you probably want something that's medium heavy with a fast action tip, which is gonna be a little stiffer. If you're going for something like a king, which will make long runs, you're gonna want something with medium action, which will be a softer tip.
Was your question more about, I think you said inexpensive in case you lose them, were you more talking about manufacturers or the actual type of rod or some manufacturer's rod?
Well, you know, like, I'm sure you know, everybody wants to get the best, but I'm saying, like, for somebody like me who has never broken through the surf, I've sat there and watched because I've looked online and seen constant people rolling over and snapping them out of their rod holders and stuff.
Let me just say, David will disagree with me on this, but Bass Pro Shop has really good equipment. Their own
Offshore
equipment.
angler.
Their offshore angler,
Offshore
all that
angler
stuff
equipment.
is really good for the
Ocean
price.
Master.
Yes.
You know, do I choose that? No, I can afford a little bit better stuff. But if you're really worried about, am I gonna lose this? Do I like this? Do I wanna spend a bunch of money before I know what I'm doing? Their combos that they have, that's a good way to get started.
And I will tell you this, the Bass Pro in Macon here, in the very back of the store is their refurb and return section. You can get some awesome deals on some great rods and reels in there. So if, like I said, it depends on your budget and how much you want to spend on and on what you can afford. they got some great deals. Some of my surf setups, I got some 11, 12-foot OM Ocean Master surf setups. They're $159 rods. You can walk in there right now and pick one up for 70 bucks, $70, $80. So, and the refurbs, a lot of them is just returns that people don't like. They don't like the rod, and they'll just return it. The Bass Pro can't sell it as a new rod because it's been bought. What they do, they'll take and they'll put it in their refurb and return center, and you can pick up, man, it rocks, dude. They got some killer deals on some of their stuff in there. But it's in the very back of the store in the camping section back there, and if you'll bust a hard right in the camping section, you'll be right in their refurb section. And it's rods, reels, they got anything you could think of in there. I mean, spinning setups, casting setups, Johnny Morse rods, it's crazy at the stuff that they got in there. It's marked way down, it's discounted big time. A lot of people don't know that.
And new to launching in the surf, and I'm sure you're probably aware of it, but it bears repeating. The first time I launched in the surf, I spent the better part of a whole day with nothing in my kayak but my butt and the kayak, and practicing.
That's
And
real good advice.
turn it over, you'll learn what things are gonna turn you over in just a day's time. It's like riding a bike. Once you get it, it'll click. But I strongly suggest, don't put anything in the kayak except yourself, and try it out. Try and roll see what's gonna make you roll, and you'll figure it out. You know, it's, there's little things that'll catch you off guard that once you realize what they are, you'll go, oh, now I know when to push myself out or when to just sit there and hold the kayak still. But again, practice, practice, practice. With nothing in the kayak, you'll learn a lot that way and not have to worry about it at all, except for a sunburn. So.
And a lot of that too, like he's touching base on, is learning to read the waves. You know, you'll get a breaker, and then in between it, you'll get another break. Like he's saying, get you some seat time, launching through the surf, and learn how to kind of read the waves as they're coming in. And that's when you're going to get your chance to actually jump through them and get out get off the beach and off the sandbars to get away from the waves.
And it comes from everything from where a wave is finished breaking until you're well out there. Never ever get sideways to a wave. Even if you're just standing there holding the kayak, a wave will rip the kayak out of your hands and tumble it, and you'll have sand all in everything in your kayak. Never ever do everything you can not to get sideways to a wave at any time.
Either keep your front or your back dead straight into the wave.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's always fun coming back in because you can kind of surf, ride the wave back into the beach, so that's always fun.
Until the wave pushes the back of your
Pushes
kayak
you sideways, and then it catches you sideways, and then you roll, you barrel roll across the beach till you get up on the sand. That ain't no fun. And then you stand up and you got sand in places you don't want it.
Makes for a glamorous finish, though.
Yeah. Yeah, monkey butt ain't no fun feeling. Yeah. Any more questions? The fisheries between the Gulf, I'm not going to say that you can't catch catch kings in Atlantic, because you can. They're more prevalent in the Gulf because of the water clarity and versus the Atlantic, especially in Georgia, because of the tidal changes in Georgia are so heavy. And it pulls so much settlement out of the marshes into the Atlantic and keeps the water stained. If you could paddle, which I'm not saying you can, if you could paddle 5 or 6 miles off the coast and get in clear water, then you stand a chance of catching a king or Spanish or whatnot that way.
That's part of the problem on the coast, is our access there.
Yeah.
Everything is, the barrier islands are 2-3 miles out there, and you gotta paddle to get past it.
Right. Like I say, I'm not saying that you can't, because you can, but it takes that extra effort to get out past that dirty water and stained water. And once you reach that clear water, then it's like being in the Gulf. So it's the Georgia coast is just so diverse with the marsh habitat and the tidal changes, and it just pulls so much of that biodegradable stuff, the plant matter and all the stuff out of the marsh into the ocean, that it's a lot of your clear water fish won't come into the dirty water. They sure won't. I'll tell you one thing about Tybee before you even go. The parking meters is outrageous. I will tell you that. You have to feed the parking meters, because if you don't, you're guaranteed a ticket. The back river at Tybee on Alley 3, You can launch there, you can paddle across over to Little Tybee, and it's one of the most beautiful places you've ever been in your life. We camped there 3 years ago, Tony, I guess roughly, we did a trip over there. When you beach over there and you get on the beach and you walk into the woods, it's like walking into a whole different ecosystem. The Spanish moss and the live oaks, and it's a really, really beautiful place. As far as
It's not a license requirement.
right,
Take that,
yeah,
now, I will say there's an outfitter on Tybee.
yeah,
They teach those classes, they
Yeah.
really like it, do that. But they also do a little guide trip, I don't think they make, it's in the backwater, but I don't think they make you take on a 6-hour class.
Well, this was one of the rental places, and she talked about the back river. Of course I've looked, I've never been there, been to Jekyll, but I didn't know the difference, and she was going into it, and she did refer me to an outfitter, so there may be a whole catch there, but
Were you renting a kayak from her?
no.
Oh.
We were looking for a place to stay,
Okay.
and she asked for, and we told her.
I thought maybe it was part of a kayak rental agreement that you're not taking our kayak unless you've had some.
Yeah, no, we were taking ours, but it was rental property, and she did steer me, I don't remember the name of the outfitter, but she said, they'll do, but I never heard that, I know.
the biggest thing about doing the back river and Tybee in general is the tides. If you want to say you wanted to take a trip to Little Tybee, you want to catch the outgoing tide, so you'll have the tide behind you to actually help you push you across the river. It's probably a 3-4 mile paddle, Randy. It's a pretty good. It's
Probably not 3, but.
it's a good little ways. What you'll do, you'll catch the tide, get it behind you, let the tide carry you over there, and hang out over there, picnic, lunch, whatever. Catch the incoming back in, and then the incoming tide will actually help you carry you back across to the launch point, to alley 3 where you put in. So that's the big thing about, like I said, the Georgia coast is the tide. You want to use the tide in your favor, most definitely.
The other thing that I was gonna add on, Dean talked initially about the saltwater information program, everybody needing to have an SIP starting this year. That's free.
Yes.
So you just go online and you register for it, and you print yourself the document. So it even shows that it has a 0 cost. It has a 2-year expiration. So mine is good from the registry date 12/02/12 going to, no, it goes to 2/28/14. So apparently it's got about 1.5 years.
Now, when these run out,
Expiration on it.
I'm not to say that they may start an actual saltwater license in Georgia. Georgia right
That's
now is pretty
everybody's
much,
fear.
Georgia's pretty much the only one state that you buy a freshwater license and you can fish saltwater. If you go to Florida, you gotta buy a freshwater and a saltwater. South Carolina, North Carolina, they're the same way. So I think Georgia's gonna try to get on board to make more revenue for the fisheries, doing the saltwater license as well.
Although what they might be thinking about is residents having one single license for everything
Right.
and non-residents splitting them out between fresh and salt. There's no way to tell what the DNR is thinking, but if you fish saltwater, you want to register for one of these, you can do it online, and then just keep it right next to your fishing license when you're fishing. And if an agent checks you in salt water, he's going to ask you for 2 things. Show me your license, show me your SIP. Okay, so we actually have.
So one thing before we switch off of this, and I don't mean to get political, but right now there's a House Bill 36 sponsored by the Coastal Conservation Association to make the redfish a game fish in this state. It's not a game fish in this state. Right now, commercial places can buy them, sell them commercially, and we'd like to get them. They still have to follow the same rules if they buy from people. Those fishermen have to follow the same rules we all follow, but we'd like to make it a commercial game fish. I mean, a game fish, give it some game fish status. So if you feel that's what you want to do, push your legislators to pass that House Bill 36.
That's a really good point. For many years in Florida, the limit on redfish was 1. They've increased it now to 2, but the reason they did that was because overfishing commercially, everybody had blackened redfish on their menu for a few years, and it was selling like hotcakes, and the population of the fish just declined so significantly that Florida ended up putting a 1-fish limit on it. And I think that lasted for about a decade before they decided to increase it to 2. So, contacting your legislators or signing petitions asking for the redfish to be given game fish status in Georgia is a good thing from a conservationist's point of view.